Millionaires read books, so you should read them too. Use the Zettelkasten note-taking method because Niklas Luhmann used it really successfully. Build a second brain because knowledge management is the most valuable skill to have right now. Great, now I consume lots of information, I organize lots of information, and I process lots of information. But I still don't really know what to do with it all. This video continues my series around note-taking. We are all involved in big communities, the love of sport, art, music, or learning, but we're also involved in small subcultures like trampoline, rock music, note-taking, or something a little bit more specific. It is in those small specific subcultures that we find people just like us. And when you see someone having the same struggle as you, or having the same realizational light bulb moment as you had like just a minute ago, or had a while ago, there is this sense of freedom, sense of enjoyment. Oh, they're just like me. People like us do things like this. And there is a sense of connectedness with you and that other person, or you and that community, but there needs to be something shared. Either they need to share something for you to see, somewhere to connect, or you need to share something for them to connect with you. Sharing stories, sharing experiences, sharing ideas, sharing thoughts, just sharing what you know with other people, because in that community, in those small subcultures, there will be people on different parts of the journey. Some right at the beginning, some really, really far ahead, maybe even experts in that subculture field. But what you have to share will always help someone, either reminding an expert of something they may have forgotten, or you've just learnt something that someone else is just about to start learning. Now, the journey of a note differs to the journey of a piece of content, but a note and a piece of content are two different things. A note is messy, unstructured, and most of the time will be focused on the capturing process and the processing process. Even if the note is finished, you're still working with it because the idea never really ends. There's no finish point because there's always something to add, something to change, something that may evolve. Whereas a creation, a piece of content, is a polished idea, a polished thought, and there is a publish time. I have published this piece of content. Adding value is a big topic, especially when it comes to sharing content, but the value is in the eye of the beholder, and in our notes case, that is us. Learning, again, is a massive topic, but if you don't use your notes, you're certainly not going to learn from them, so you need to use them in some way, but that doesn't necessarily mean flashcards or questions, because for me, that's boring. It's about living in the notes and applying them to a philosophy of practice. Our identity and our personal philosophy in different contexts will shape how we behave, which is our philosophy of practice. Sharing what you know can be done through sharing content, but also communication. Just talking in small communities, small groups, getting that across, or applying theory to practice. During my time coaching in the gym, I wasn't going to talk to the athletes I was working with about motor units or hydrogen ions percentage of thresholds. It's going to be in my mind and I'm going to be thinking about theory in practice, but I'm not going to say it. I'm going to focus on who I'm coaching, focus on the individuals, and use the knowledge to better develop my own practice, hopefully, fingers crossed, helping their performance in whatever metric or area I'm looking to coach them at that time. Using notes from the past, reflection, feedback, ideas, thoughts, anything that I had seen before or have in my mind helps me develop my practice for the future. Using a brain dump or question storming to get ideas and questions out of my head onto a piece of paper so I can start thinking about them more clearly. It gets it out into a conversation and it stops a little bit of overthinking. And using spaced repetition and active recall, not necessarily flashcards and questioning for regurgitation of information, but living in my notes, living in the practice, working through those thoughts, those ideas, that theory on a regular basis. I started journaling not because I liked it, because I wanted to do it, because I wanted to follow someone else to do it. I started journaling because I wanted to explore different ideas and I wanted some mental space, just a 10-minute slot, mental clear time to explore an idea, to explore a topic that I can then apply to my practice. It not only helps me identify holes in my own knowledge, it also helps me explain my ideas verbally to myself, and if I can't understand myself, I obviously don't understand the topic or area, but it also allows me to make connections because I'm talking through these ideas, other things are coming up, so I can make those connections in that journaling session, so when I review it later on, spaced repetition, active recall, I then can make links for furthering my practice. I covered linking notes and ideas in a previous video, but being a note collector, having an abundance of notes allows you to reverse engineer your thoughts and ideas, and this video series is a perfect example. I started with one note and reverse engineered. I went backwards through my notes, through the highlighted points, and just made some small notes, small ideas here and there, and it turned into a video. Then 2, then 3, now 4. And as I went through these videos, there were notes that kept coming up because there were crossover points. So I was adding to the notes, I was changing the notes, and sometimes I was completely scrapping a note because it was just engulfed by a different idea. But without me condensing these thoughts and ideas so that I can share them in the sub-communities that I'm in with the people that obviously are watching these videos, I wouldn't have first better understood whatever it is that I was thinking about, wouldn't have been able to convey something that makes sense to someone else, i.e. you guys watching, and it would also mean the knowledge, the notes that I've grabbed would just be there, stagnant, basically completely useless. Now, vanity metrics like views, likes, comments, shares, even praise, people agreeing with you, medals, awards, that's not what sharing what you know is about for me. For me, sharing what I know is about who is watching, who is listening, and what they're doing about it that's actually going to make a difference. 10 million views on a productivity video that gets people watching more videos and doing less work and less practice is kind of doing the opposite of the point of sharing the video. Sharing experiences and information is not the same as giving advice. The purpose of giving advice, I think, should be about getting the person, the consumer, to ask the right questions or ask better questions, not just adopt the opinion or adopt the justification that that person has said through sharing their experience or information. Something like using reactive documents or reactive content where the consumer can explore the assumptions, explore the conclusions that the author, the creator, the person sharing the information is actually saying. Now, I know this isn't always easy in practice, especially online, where you're trying to create digital environments where people can interact, but when you are creating content or you're sharing something in a community or you're doing something in practice, you can create an environment that allows for certain constraints or assumptions where the person has to work out, okay, would this work? Wouldn't this work? Just like you would do in the constraints-led approach to coaching. Explorable examples is something else that you could use, which is, as it says, find examples that the individual, the consumer, can explore. Now, again, it can be difficult to apply this, but case studies is a perfect example. A summary of multiple case studies in different contexts that explain whatever it is that you are talking about, the topic, the idea, the thought. Hopefully that makes sense. Then contextual information is also pretty important because if they are new, maybe they don't understand the jargon or lingo that you're using, so it can separate them, which isn't obviously great if you want them to be involved in the subculture. And expanding from that, situational experiences like different scenarios can also help give some better context in what it is you're talking about, because a lot of the time there's the what if scenarios. What if this? What if that? And if you don't cover those options, cover those thoughts, or ask those questions at least, then you're neglecting certain perspectives. And then hopefully with the contextual information, the data isn't being manipulated as best as possible, so it is giving a good interpretation of the information. This is where the expertise reversal effect can come into play, which basically says that the more you do something, the more you learn, the more you understand, the more likely you are to make assumptions when explaining it to other people, which is where you have lecturers talking to students and it just goes way over their heads because there's assumptions the lecturers have made that the students just don't know yet. And I'm sure we are all guilty of this. And this is why sharing what you know, no matter what part of the journey you're on, is pretty important, because that person that's just one page behind you is going through struggles you've just gone through. The people that went through those 3, 4, 5 years ago will struggle to relate to the struggles they're having now. And the script of the video I'm going through goes through this process. I've taken notes, so I've captured information. I've organized it away using bottom-up note-taking. I have then brought those points into this idea. So I then expanded that idea, looking at the different links, looking at the different ideas. I've condensed those together into something that I can then put out into the universe with a date, knowing at some point this is going to be outdated and my ideas that this video has come from will have evolved, will have changed, but this is the piece of content I've made at this point, and the notes can create another piece of content with updated information or ideas or thoughts. And every single point made in this piece of content can be traced all the way back to its source if I want to. So when I'm reviewing it, So when I'm reviewing the video later on, when I'm editing or looking at it month, 2 months, years time, because we forget this stuff sometimes. Maybe I just want to watch my own content. But when I'm watching it back, I can go, oh, that was a nice idea. Have a look at the source and see where my thinking has evolved from there. And when I look back at this video, I can ask myself those questions that I'm asking in the video. Who am I sharing with? Should I share more? Should I share less? Where do I share? When do I share? How much do I share? Can I help someone else with my knowledge? And how would I go about doing that? In my next video, I will be going through my entire workflow in Obsidian, but until then, get off YouTube and do something productive with your time instead.